The crushing, starless void of the outer rim didn't just feel empty. It hummed with the silent, heavy gravity of a dozen dead worlds. Inside the cavernous, obsidian-walled throne room of the flagship Ethelgard, 300 multi-jointed Xylarian elite officers stood frozen in rigid, breathless suspense. High Warlord Vraksh towered upon the central dais, his 12-foot bioengineered frame encased in jagged, iridescent void chitin that rippled with the dark blood of 1,000 conquered solar systems. His 4 primary optical stalks flared with a blinding, triumphal crimson hue as he looked down at the solitary prisoner bound in the center of the reinforced steel deck. There stood the absolute last known combatant of the Sol system. He was a battered mountain of scarred titanium composite armor, caked in the thick ash of burned continents and blackened by the searing plasma backwash of a fallen cradle world. His left pauldron had been sheared completely away by a railgun blast, exposing the torn, scorched weave of an undersuit soaked in dark, dried crimson. Yet, despite having no active weapons, no shield generator, and no breathable oxygen remaining in his reserve tanks, the human refused to slouch. He stood with a terrifying, immovable poise that made the alien officers in the gallery grip their plasma pikes in sudden, instinctive unease. "Look upon your ruined cradle," Vraksh's synthesized voice boomed, vibrating through the titanium deck plates and rattling the teeth of every captive in the hall. The warlord stepped down from the dais, his massive metallic talons clicking rhythmically against the floor like the march of an executioner. "Orbital grids are space dust," Vraksh roared, his multi-jointed mandibles parting in a savage, mocking grin. "Your billions are dead. Every trench is filled, every citadel leveled. You are the final, pathetic scrap of a broken, burning species." Vraksh raised his massive, gauntlet hand, pointing a 4-inch razor-sharp claw directly at the Marine's forehead. "Kneel, human," the warlord ordered, his voice dripping with absolute, uncontested dominion. "Bow your head before the conqueror of the galaxy, and perhaps your execution will be swift." The Marine did not move a single millimeter. He didn't drop to a knee. He didn't flinch under the crushing psychic weight of the command. He didn't even shift his weight. Instead, a slow, gravelly chuckle escaped his cracked, bleeding lips, a dry, terrifying sound that cut through the low hum of the ship's subatomic engines like a butcher's knife. "You think you won," the Marine said. His voice was a low, steady rumble that carried no fear, only a strange, chilling fatigue. Vraksh snarled, his optical stalks narrowing into thin, angry slits. "You dare mock me? You stand alone in the belly of my flagship with 0 kinetic ammunition, 0 power reserves, and 0 hope." "Yeah," the Marine replied softly. "Ido." With a slow, agonizingly deliberate motion, the soldier reached up with his right hand. His thick, carbon fiber gauntlet gripped the heavy locking seal at the base of his battered assault helmet. A thick cloud of pressurized oxygen and white condensation vented instantly from the neck seal, fogging the cold air around his shoulders. With a sharp, metallic twist, the Marine lifted the heavy helmet clear off his head and tossed it carelessly onto the cold titanium deck. It clattered loudly, rolling to a dead stop against the base of a glowing plasma pillar. The 300 alien officers in the gallery collectively stopped breathing. They expected a face twisted in terror, or weeping, or foaming at the mouth with blind, suicidal rage. Instead, they saw a middle-aged man with short, iron-gray hair shaved close to a scarred skull, a web of jagged white burns across his left jaw, and cold, pale blue eyes that looked at the 12-foot warlord the way a master carpenter looks at a termite-infested piece of wood. He wasn't a fresh-faced recruit. He had deep lines carved into his forehead and crow's feet around his eyes, the face of a veteran who had lived through 3 decades of unceasing, brutal industrial warfare. Vraksh paused, his towering frame hovering halfway down the steps of the dais. A sudden, icy prickle of unease rippled through his multi-layered nervous system, bypassing his cybernetics entirely. What is the meaning of this insolence?" Vraksh demanded, his voice pitching down as his tactical processors struggled to categorize the human's complete lack of panic. "Show me your terror, human. Tremble before my gaze." The Marine Staff Sergeant Marcus Vance, formerly of the 104th Terran Drop Regiment, didn't tremble. He reached slowly into a torn tactical pouch on his belt, pulled out a small, flat metallic object no larger than a matchbox, and held it up between his thumb and forefinger. It was a standard-issue Terran Deadman's telemetry relay. A tiny, amber-colored light blinked rhythmically upon its matte black surface. "You know, Warlord," Marcus said, his voice terrifyingly calm, cutting through the silence of the bridge like a falling leaf hitting concrete. "Back home on Earth, we had an old saying during the orbital sweeps. Vraksh's 4 optical stalks dilated in sudden, stark incomprehension. What nonsense are you babbling about? Your home world is dead. Earth is dead, yeah." Marcus agreed, a faint, humorless smile touching the corner of his cracked mouth. "You cracked the crust. Good job. Took you 3 months of continuous bombardment. But you made one fundamental tactical error while you were busy glassing the cities." "Error," Vraksh boomed, though his voice lacked its previous thunder, echoing hollowly off the vaulted ceiling. "We left nothing alive. Not a single city stands." "You didn't check the basement," Marcus whispered. Before Vraksh could process the warning, Marcus pressed his thumb firmly against the center button of the relay. The blinking amber light instantly snapped into a solid, blinding, incandescent crimson. Across the massive, planet-cracking dreadnought, a completely different kind of sound began to echo through the structural bulkheads. It wasn't the high-pitched whine of alien plasma drives or the hum of life support systems. It was a low, mechanical, rhythmic grinding sound. The sound of heavy industrial hydraulic pumps waking up from a deep, multi-century slumber. Thump, thump, thump. Deep within the structural marrow of the Ethelgard, millions of tons of dormant, unshielded mass began to shift in unison. Vraksh's tactical console on the dais suddenly shrieked with a high-priority, system-wide emergency override. The central holoscreen flashed violent red, displaying data feeds that had been hidden beneath encrypted subroutines since the very beginning of the interstellar war. Warning: unauthorized telemetry anchor locked. Origin: Sol System ORT Cloud. Abandoned mining harvesters 01 through 10,000.
Payload, relativistic kinetic slug, 100 ton tungstène carbide core.
Velocity: 0.35 c, 1/3 the speed of light. Time to impact: 14 seconds. The entire bridge of the flagship plunged into a dead, suffocating, absolute vacuum of sound. Vraksh stared down at the flashing red screen, his multi-jointed mandibles trembling so violently they clicked together like dry bones. He slowly lifted his head, turning his 4 terrifying eyes back toward the unarmored human standing in the center of the room. You didn't fight us to win the planet," Vraksh whispered, the horrifying realization hitting him with the force of a physical blow to his chest. "You fought us to place a homing beacon inside my flagship's hull." Marcus Vance lowered his hand, letting the telemetry relay drop from his fingers to bounce harmlessly against the steel deck. He looked straight into the warlord's terrified crimson eyes, his pale blue gaze as cold and eternal as deep space itself. "We knew we couldn't beat your fleet in a fair ship-to-ship fight," Marcus said softly, his voice echoing off the vaulted crystal ceiling. "So we didn't build a navy. We built a trap. And you just walked right into the jaws." Marcus checked his wrist chronometer, tapped the cracked glass twice with his thumb, and looked up with a small, polite nod. 10 seconds, Warlord," Marcus murmured. "It's been real," Vraksh shrieked in primal, unadulterated panic, spinning around toward his helm officers with frantic, clawed hands. "Evasive maneuvers. All engines full reverse. Shield the BR." The rest of the Warlord's command was instantly lost as 10,000 relativistic kinetic slugs, hurled across the void from the Oort cloud by automated gravitational catapults that humanity had constructed centuries ago, struck the underside of the Ethelgard simultaneously. There was no sound in the vacuum of space. But inside the bridge, The shockwave tore through the reinforced bulkheads like paper, incinerating 300 alien officers in a blinding wall of white-hot plasma before they could even draw a single breath. Staff Sergeant Marcus Vance stood tall, his pale blue eyes reflecting the brilliant, fleeting flash of an empire coming to an end, knowing that the last thing the conquerors of the galaxy would ever see was the face of a human who refused to kneel.